engaging, enlightening. The Ken and Mike Show. And now, Ken and Mike.
Hello, hello, hello. We're live. We're ready. We're alive, I think.
Sure.
I was hearing my voice from somewhere else a little while ago. We figured out what it was, though. It was another dimension. I'm hearing it now. Welcome to the show. We are so thankful that you tuned in because you know what? We got a great live show for you tonight, and we have a great guest coming on tonight who you're not going to want to miss because he's an incredible man. If you haven't heard of him, we'll introduce him in a little while, Dr. Steve Turley. But Mike, how are you?
Excellent. How are you, Ken?
I'm really, really good. How are things going?
Good.
Yeah.
Got a nice change in the weather. Starting to see
Oh my gosh.
Starting to see a little bit of a switch in the atmosphere.
Atmosphere is what I like. I don't want it to change.
No.
Stay like this forever.
And then tomorrow will be cold.
Right. This is why, I mean, again, I love New York.
Yep.
And I don't. But
I'm liking it less and less.
Well, I'm getting to the place where, I mean, I shouldn't say I'm getting to the place. I've been at the place where the bad has outweighed the good of New York, where I'm like, okay, I could just, say good riddance.
Pull up your tent spikes and spikes and get the heck
I
out
thought you were
of
going to
here.
say something else about, but good.
But
I'm glad you
anyway.
said. Anyway,
So,
good. Yes.
Welcome to the Ken and Mike Show.
And thank you for tuning in. Yes.
We're on YouTube.
We are. Are we?
Are we? All right.
Are we on YouTube?
We're on YouTube.
We're on YouTube.
And then we've been kicked, but
Yeah, we've been.
are we back on?
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Our 400,000 subscribers, I think,
We're back
are
on.
finding us again.
Although Mel did let me know the news today that one show has been permanently deleted.
Yes, I did hear that.
So
Well,
we are
yes.
permanently deleted.
Yes.
But anyway,
Yes.
so you can find us on YouTube. You can find
can.
us.
Well, not right now.
Not right
Okay.
now.
Where else can you find us?
Right now, it's just on YouTube.
You can find us anywhere. If you just look us up, just Google Ken and Mike Show. Google the BMG Network, and
Yes,
you will
sir.
see our faces. Speaking of faces,
Yes, sir.
I need to introduce somebody incredible to me. And, with us right now is someone who is widely considered one of the most exciting voices in today's intellectual dark web. He's an internationally recognized scholar, speaker, author of over not one, two, but 20 books, and is the host of Turley Talks, which you can check out at turleytalks.com. Dr. Steve Turley, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Ken. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah,
It's
we
great honor. Thank you.
No, it's an honor for us. No, we just need his volume up a little bit. But Dr. Turley, excuse me, right away, what is it that you do? Tell us, our audience, a little bit about yourself. And why are you this internationally recognized scholar? I mean, you really, you're amazing. You really are.
Well, the Academy won't have me. They vomited me out, and I'm very happy they have in many respects. I was always banging my head against the wall in universities and education. So they really don't have a play. That's why we call it the intellectual dark web. There were topics we're just not allowed to talk about in the normal sphere of things in the academy. And so, God bless it. I mean, YouTube and podcasts, the internet's become the place where we can talk about these things. I think for me, the big thing, kind of my shtick, as it were, developed while I was doing my doctoral studies at Durham University, where they filmed some of the Harry Potters. Durham's in northern England.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just south of Newcastle for you beer fans out there. And people tend to go through Durham real quick on their way up to Edinburgh or something in Scotland, but it's a beautiful medieval town, as the Harry Potter series showed. And I came across a field of study there called post-secular studies. We might know it a little more commonly as post-globalist studies. And, this is back in 2008 or so, 2009. And the gist of these studies was that the old modernist sort of secularized, globalized world is actually on its last legs. It's exhausted. It's beginning to collapse, and more populations around the world are returning to religion and to culture and to custom and tradition as a basis for the future. One scholar actually called it archaeofuturism. This is a Guillaume Faye, Frenchman, who talked about the idea that the future would maintain the technology of the modern age, but the philosophy, the secularism, was just going to die, and we're going to turn it almost like a Star Wars kind of world, you know, where you have mysticism and religiosity infused with a thoroughly technological world. I was blown away by the scholarship. I didn't believe it at first, to be honest with you. I mean, I believed it when it came to like the Middle East or Northern Africa or Russia or India or something like that. But the West, I mean, forget about it. Where secularism triumphed, it was going to get worse and worse, and we just need to be, you know, build our bunkers and just deal with it.
Right.
And I'll never forget. I just stayed enamored with the scholarship, kept reading it, and they kept saying, "You watch, the secular globalist world is going to begin receding." And then I'll just never forget waking up the morning of June 24th, 2016. And I saw the headlines in the newspaper, Brexit happened. And for the first time in our lifetimes, the EU, which is really the symbol, the par excellence of globalism, shrank. It was beginning to recede. And within 24 hours, they were talking about a Frexit and a Swexit, yes, a France, Sweden, a Nexit, Netherlands, Italexit.
Yep.
And then just a few months later, Trump wins in an absolute electoral landslide, first Republican to get over 300 electoral votes since 1988. And I saw this scholarship come alive right before my very eyes. And I said, I got to share this with the world. And it's been my passion ever since. And
you've been doing very well at it. I mean, you're a YouTube sensation, right? I mean...
I guess so. Yeah, you want God to laugh? Tell him your plans.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's so true. Mike, did you have a question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, you know, right away, one of the books your most recent book, which is entitled "The Return of Christendom," you discuss what's brewing beneath the surface, kind of what we were just talking about, while the secular left continues to celebrate their so-called victory laps. So, as you well know. We've seen many ups and downs in our history. However, we've seen God do some amazing things, such as the Great Awakening, for example. Sure. When observing America through the lens of Christianity, it's obvious that on the surface, it's falling apart at the seams when you watch it from that perspective, literally. Especially when we look at the media bias, the out-of-control government spending, horrible legislation, and the signing of way too many executive orders, and an obvious and very serious problem at our borders. And that's kind of loaded stuff there. But what I want to ask you about in saying all of this is there going to be a revitalization of Christian civilization? And what does it look like? Will it be like another Great Awakening?
That's a great question. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if it'll be another Great Awakening. If you're talking about the sort of the Edwardian Whitfield Great Awakening, that was a different context. You know, that was with the experiential Calvinism reigning pretty supreme in the 18th century in the United States. Keep in mind, that's part of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is a really fascinatingly complex thing. It's not just pure secularity or anything like that. Right. Jonathan Edwards, in many ways, was an Enlightenment thinker, but who held on to Christendom as a basis for understanding the world scientifically. I think there's two dynamics that's operating to bringing back what I call Christendom. This idea of a return, a re-traditionalization to nation, culture, custom, and tradition. And the first dynamic is a demographic revolution that's going on, and this comes particularly from Eric Kaufman and his "Shall the Religious Inherit the Earth" thesis. Right. And it's a very complex book. It's well footnoted. He's with the University of London demographer. And he found that the fertility discrepancy between conservative religionists in the West, obviously most particularly Christians, and secularists was significant enough that it was already beginning to tilt the political and cultural landscape in certain areas, not just here in the United States, but in Europe as well, towards the right side of the culture war. And I do mean that politically as well as epistemologically, the right side, that is true. So if you take the 30% fertility differential that exists today between conservative religionists and secularists, and you line them up, say you take both sides and make them 50-50. So 50% of the population conservative Christian, 50% is secular. What Kaufman points out is with a 30% fertility differential in one generation, 20 years, that population becomes 60-40. In 2 generations, that population becomes 75-25, obviously in favor of the conservative Christian. And in 10 generations, so in 200 years, 99-1. And what we're finding is that the more conservative the family, the more conservative the household, the more the children grow up retaining the faith into adulthood. Amish has some of the highest retention rates of any denomination. They're at 80-90% retention rates. And so the more conservative, the more they retain their conservatism into adulthood, and the more conservative, the more children that they have. Ironically, the worldview that has the lowest retention rate for their kids are atheists, which is a very odd, very strange.
I just find it interesting. It's like, listening to that is very encouraging.
Yes.
But I mean, does that correlate with the indoctrination that goes on in the public school system and the secular worldview that's being taught,
like critical race theory, for example,
to these children?
Yeah,
I mean,
it is. So when you're dealing with it's 2 things. So when you're dealing with the indoctrination, that'll count for the 20%, the 30% that fall away easily. They just get immersed into the world. They think, yeah, this is cool, prodigal rocks, and they move on. But we have to remember, again, the more conservative, the more we rely on parallel structures, the more we rely on a parallel policy. Homeschooling's up 300% since COVID started.
Right.
I mean, real homeschooling. I mean,
Yes.
parents,
yeah.
Yeah, parents who said, I'm done. I'm not going back to public school. And they're going to.
That's got to put a real thorn in the system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really fascinating stuff. So whether it's homeschooling, Bible colleges, classical education, healthcare cost sharing ministries, getting out of the Obamacare world or that kind of thing. It's really fascinating stuff. And then of course now with the rise of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and so forth, I mean, the conditions have never been more ripe for a fully alternative, parallel structured world that has a fertility advantage. And so that's the exciting thing.
It is exciting. And on a side note, if I can remember my password to get on to see how much Bitcoin I have right now, I could be a millionaire and not even know it. I can't.
Was it 12? Yeah, 12, 20. I know.
I can't get on it. No, that is incredibly fascinating, and count me in. I mean, my family's, we're one of those. I have 3 kids. We homeschool because again, it's just enough of it. It's just, and it had nothing to do with our particular school. Is a fantastic school, but they can't do anything about what comes their way. And we just, it's just like, I've had enough of it. My kids, I don't want them to have to put up with that, and so here we are doing what we can do to keep them sane, and ourselves. Somehow.
Right, exactly. and you brought up the borders, which is interesting too, because nothing is igniting sort of this nationalist populist blowback, this backlash, than illegal immigration. We have the studies behind that, particularly in Europe. Europe's ahead of us on this one. We're lagging behind. Europe has those third parties like Matteo Salvini's Lega, or Giorgio Meloni's, the Brothers of Italy. Obviously in Italy, or National Rally in France, where, they are openly stating, Fidesz in Hungary, Law and Justice in Poland, they are openly stating we need to return to a thoroughly confessional Christian society if we're going to fight against this civilizational threatening globalism.
Wow.
Pro-life policies are being instituted now, particularly in Hungary and Poland and the nation of Georgia, in Russia, particularly through the influence of the Russian Orthodox Church, because they're saying openly, if we don't have pro-life policies, we're not going to exist in 100 years.
So
we're
you
going
think
to demographically disappear.
So you think that we can turn the tide then? We're not heading off a cliff?
The great news, the wonderful news is you had this. Well, I have a very good friend of mine who born and raised in Russia. He's here in the United States. He's as he's a patriot party as you could possibly get. Gun owner, a business owner, entrepreneur, and like that. He looks at me and says, "For me, this is round 2." This is Act Two. We've been through this before. And he'll say that. He'll say the way you hear the woke left talk today is exactly the way the Soviet Politburo would talk about the need for equality and social justice and how we're paying for our past sins with the czar and all this sort of nonsense. And he said, this is round two. I've seen it. It's not going to last. It's going to kill itself like it did on December 25th, 1991. The question is just how much damage does it cause?
Yes.
That was my next question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a big, I mean, obviously the summer showed you can cause a lot of damage. We're all, holding our breath with the Derek Chauvin trial in Minneapolis. It could cause a lot of damage, and not just that, but just its philosophy, its conception of the human person is so confused, and the notion of the human good is so vague and warped, and so no question, it's horrible. But communism was horrific. It lasted 70 years in a modern world. Keep in mind, we're moving into a postmodern world, and that's what's frustrating the left right now. The left really doesn't know what to do with that. The modern world is characterized by centralization. What was known as mass society. We're now moving into what's called the network society, where we are related not so much by spatial proximity to one another. Now we're related through the internet, networks, and so with VPNs and all these kinds of private protective measures and, crypto and all that sort of stuff, the world is becoming radically decentralized. And that's very good if you are worried about tyranny, because tyrants do not like decentralization.
Well, then how do regimes like China remain in such a big influence in their region? I mean, I agree with what he's saying as far as, all being interconnected and being the influence that way with networking and the internet and things like that. But you still have China flourishing like you wouldn't believe, and what they have going on with human rights and all that stuff. Do you see an end to that? I mean,
but yeah, I think you're mixing apples and oranges there. China was a thoroughly tyrannical, centralized modernist state. So if you take modernity as the world order that comes out of the Enlightenment, the 18th century Enlightenment, works itself out through the Industrial Revolution, and then crystallizes itself around three major political philosophies: Western liberalism, Soviet communism, and Nazi fascism. And they all competed of who was going to be the one-size-fits-all, scientifically rational, secular, political and economic system for the entire world. This is where you got the Francis Fukuyama thesis of the end of history after the Soviet Union collapsed. He said, all right, well, we won. So it's Western liberalism, which turned into globalism.
Right.
That is our China, as it were. That globalism came out of the modern world, and it's trying to hold on to power. What China did is very interesting. It was communist, it's modern. Right. It's trying to hold on to its power as we're moving into a postmodern world, where a world that rejects this one size fits all and goes to nation, culture, custom, and tradition. That's why nationalism and populism and re-traditionalization are flourishing. China's still holding on to the modernist apparatus that they had set up in a very tyrannical century, the 20th century. Fortunately, by God's grace, we didn't have that tyrannical setup. I mean, say what you want about Reagan, but that was no tyranny. Especially what we're facing now, or even George Herbert Walker Bush or so forth. They're trying to set up a tyrannical structure now. That's the key. The Democratic left is trying to set up a thoroughly cultural Marxist government in a time where we're becoming increasingly decentralized. And we just want to say, dudes, you're 40 years too late. You could have done that.
Good point.
There was a time you could have done that. The structures were there. The frames of reference were there. There's going to be a one-size-fits-all political and economic system. It's either Soviet Union or it's us. And in that frame of reference, you can do that. With no Soviet Union anymore, with that gone, and with China going with a managed capitalism, it is a very hard bill to sell that, we need this one-size-fits-all structure for all people, times, and places, even though we can't agree what gender is.
Well,
that's another topic.
That right there, and the way that you put, and the way that you, sorry, and the way that you put that, though, it's hopeful. It's hopeful because that's the worst case scenario, what you just mentioned, what they want to try to do, which we don't want them to do, of course, especially in this America that we, again, it's spitting on our founding fathers and saying like, okay, this freedom that you set up for us, we appreciate it, but we don't want that anymore. And it's becoming more or less, a government for itself, by itself, of itself, instead of for the people. And that's the problem. And I think sometimes there's people that are too naive and they buy this hook, line, and sinker, not realizing that they're being used for something that has really nothing to do with them except for them being stepping stones so they can get to where they want to get. But I like that you say that it's too late. And I pray to God that it is too late, because under this administration now, and recently you just wrote in your piece, which is a great piece, by the way, if you go to the TurleyTalks.com, it's the border crisis and cancel culture destroying Dems as populism surges under Biden. That's a big statement. So you think that they're going to implode, correct?
Yeah. Well, again, there's all kinds of implosions if you think about it.
Sure.
Soviet Union imploded in the 70s, but they didn't actually fall. Right? They imploded internally in the 70s. Nobody took them seriously anymore. And there was nothing that Gorbachev could do other than to break in perestroika and open up the Soviet Union to modernity. He had to do it. There was the core was gone. So I think in many ways the core of the Democratic Party is dying. Do you honestly think that the media has to go to the length it does to put on a kabuki theater, to put on that kind of virtual reality like that, what they called as a press conference, if they were confident that the Democrats were thoroughly in control? That's true. They know it requires a matrix-like propaganda in order to sell this to people, because it's so weak and it's so pathetic. But having said that, we have the studies now that show that nothing awakens populist sentiments. And populism, by definition, is the notion that there is a radical discrepancy between the values and interests concerns of the political class versus the values, interests, and concerns of the people. There's the people feel the increasing alienation between the way their nation is being run and the way they value and think about life and what they're concerned with. And nothing unleashes those sentiments more than illegal immigration. So we have a very interesting study from the Chatham House, which is a think tank in Britain, that, like I said, Britain or Europe in general is ahead of us on this one. And they found, if I recall the numbers, around 60% of the British political class believed immigration was always good for Britain, whereas only 25% of the population, the general population in Britain, believed that. And what they found in both Brexit and in the 2016 American election is wherever there was the most demographic change in the two countries, in their respective counties, due to particularly illegal immigration, those were the counties that were most likely to vote for Brexit and vote for Trump. So this is what we're finding. We're finding it's the opposite of what a lot of secular liberals have thought, that if you just inundate a country with migrants, everyone will just eventually get used to it and we'll move on. No, that's not what happened. As a matter of fact, in rural areas, it only unleashed and exacerbated those populist sentiments, that it's the people versus the political class. So what we're seeing on the border, you could be assured, is already animating that. We're finding out with the polls, over 51, 52% people do not want amnesty going to the immigrants at the border. 70% blame Biden for it, and they're horrified by it. There's actually a poll that found that 96% of our nation, that's 96% of those polled, either believe the border is a crisis or it is a very, very serious situation.
Yes.
You don't get more repudiated than that.
Well, you're blind if you don't see it.
Exactly. And I do think it's a very serious situation. And again, I had stated in a recent piece that I had put out there, I had talked about, it was Article 4, Section 4. It talks about our borders and how there's an obligation there. And the question is, I mean, I know the answer. Are they working under the Constitution when it comes to this stuff? I feel like they are not at all. It's completely unconstitutional. And is this a true, under the definition of what an invasion is? I would even call it an invasion of immigrants. They're invading our countries, and we're doing nothing about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then you have to ask, then the next question is, well, why aren't they doing anything about it?
Yes.
That's where the globalist sentiments kick in both parties in the duopoly. So the Democrats want new voters and Republicans want cheap labor. They want to maximize their margins for their Chamber of Commerce or what have you. So absolutely, it's a terrible thing of getting. This is what globalism does. Globalism is a vast interlocking mechanism of technology and telecommunications that, in effect, just by organically, it creates a single political and economic system. So globalism is a wonderful servant. It enables us to do this, enables us to do super travel and, fly around the place and all these great things. It's a great servant. It's when it becomes a master that it becomes an idol, and it's horrific. And what we're finding is that globalists, they can scale their businesses at levels hitherto never see. The Roman Empire never got anywhere near Jeff Bezos and Amazon in terms of its scope.
Right.
Okay,
Exactly.
Good point.
What we can do today in terms of scaling is astonishing, but that requires us to break through borders and frontiers. And the good news is that economic nationalism is biting back big time. So India is pushing back with the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party. It's a Hindu nationalist party under Narendra Modi. They just won 2 landslide victories in a row, the biggest democratic elections victory ever in human history. That's a little trivia there. It's something to hold on to when we say, can we reverse this? We have to remember, India was the model. It was considered the model secular triumph. It was considered the model secular nation in many respects, where it had a thoroughly religious population, but a very, very British educated secular ruling class. And it collapsed, utterly collapsed just 6 years ago with the rise of BJP and Hindu nationalism, because the people revolted. And they've stayed revolted in that. So they're putting on special measures. I mean, Amazon is more or less eBay in India right now, because India puts so many restrictions on them that they have to sell a certain amount of products that were manufactured inside India. Russia's doing the same. China's doing its own version of that as well. We were doing it under Trump. Brazil is doing it its own with Jair Bolsonaro. So that's the wave of the future. But unfortunately, the question is, how much are we going to pay with these globalists in charge?
Well, you see a lot of things happening around the world. Myanmar, for example, you see what's happening there. I mean, I had the privilege of going there in 2016, I believe it was. I was there for a couple of weeks, and it wasn't like it is now. But it's very interesting, the uprising that's happening there, and the overthrow of a certain political person, and then the military taking over now. So you see all these things happening around the world, because it made me. You said India, so it's kind of almost that section of the world there.
Sure, of course.
And
Sri Lanka.
it's just I don't know if you've ever gone over that way, but it's terrifying if you're there. Of course, I know some people that are there living there, Americans now. They married some of the nationalists there. It's a tough place right now, depending on what part you're in and how hidden in the mountains you are. Really.
Yeah. And it's funny because when we talk about sort of a new nationalist populist world rising, it's not a utopia. We're not utopianists by any stretch of the imagination. We're still going to have lots of humans never fail to disappoint, right? We learned that in Genesis 3.
Right. Yes.
All right. Genesis 3 and Romans 1, boom. There's so humans never fail to disappoint. A new conservative age, a return of religion and tradition, so forth, is going to have its own problems. The good news is that increasingly globalism will not be one of them.
Well, that's excellent. That's a good thing. So, of course, one thing I want to mention real quick that you said this, I think, in one of your pieces. I don't know if it was your video or your piece. You said it's nothing less than a Democrat civil war. and that it's destroying both themselves and the cities they rule. And which I get what you're saying there, because anything that you look across the board, anything that's run by Democrats, as much as they want to wash it away, it's so blatantly obvious. Chicago is always an example, but California is a great example.
New York,
New York is an excellent example here in New York. And I certainly can't disagree with you say that. But what are you implying when you're saying a Democrat civil war? What does that look like?
So so what we're seeing with the rise of BLM and Antifa, what we have to understand, this is not what we tend to do. Is we tend to think this is a terrible offense to the things that we love about our nation, and that is correct. That is true. But we can also fail to see that this is every bit as much an assault on the old left as it is on, say, the right, or, a sense of nation, culture, custom, and tradition. So there is a woman, for example, her name is Melina Abdullah. She is the founder of BLM LA, and she was giving a very fascinating speech over the summer, and somebody held up a sign saying F Trump. And she accosted that person and said, hey, when you say F Trump, make sure you also say F Eric Garcetti. Now, Eric Garcetti is the mayor of LA. He cut the police budget by $100 million or so, just to show his fealty to BLM and so on. But here you have the leader of BLM LA coming out and saying, the reason why we need to say F Eric Garcetti is because this city is filled with liberal white supremacists. And that was a fascinating statement. So she says, when you say F Trump, make sure you also say F Eric Garcetti. And if you notice what she just said, what she told Eric Garcetti is, we may be of the same party, but we're not on the same side.
Wow.
We are a new left, and there's no place for you in the new left. So what you're finding is whether it's what's his name, Jacob Fry in Minneapolis, right? Go home, Jacob, go home. Or whether it's Ted Wheeler in Portland, or whether it's Durkin in Seattle. Whoever it is, even in a certain sense, whether it's Cuomo and de Blasio in Manhattan, regardless, it's left versus left. It's left fighting left, and it's an old bougie white left, the Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Sleepy Joe left, versus this new fully Marxist, Antifa BLM left, and they don't have any use for the old left any more than they have for Confederate statues.
That's true. There is a real clear divide in the left. I mean, I didn't see it more clearly than the way he just explained it just now, but it's true. It's accurate.
We should turn on our Democratic Civil War TV screens and just sit back and watch, see what happens there.
Well, I mean, we could go the next step with it, because if you think it through all the way, to go full circle, it's really fascinating. If you go all the way with it, what's happening? And again, the left doesn't recognize this. They don't realize this. But if the Clash of Civilizations thesis of Sam Huntington is correct, at least in principle, that the old modernist world is breaking up into this decentralized postmodern world of tribalisms and so on and so forth, right?
Right.
Well, then in many respects, you only have two choices here. You're either going to have a renewed and vibrant civic nationalism, which is what Trump stood for, which is a polyethnic nation state that reasserts its national sovereignty, its borders, its economic sovereignty, bringing its manufacturing back home. We found out it's not a very good idea to have pharmaceuticals manufactured in Beijing,
Right.
This is true.
And to return to particularly the religious traditions that bound us together as a people. We're either going there, or we're going with what Michel Mafasoli, the postmodern French scholar, called neo-tribalisms. We're going to ethno-nationalisms. And what do you think BLM is? What do you think La Raza is, right? In many respects, they're every bit as alt-right as Richard Spencer. There's no difference. Now, I know they're Marxists, but Richard Spencer doesn't have a problem with socialism. We tended to define left and right in economic terms in the 20th century, capitalism versus communism. But now left and right is increasingly being defined in globalist versus tribalist terms. And in that sense, BLM is a kind of, ethno-tribalist right that's ascending within the Democratic Party. So in many ways, they're a Trojan horse, and they're demolishing this party that for decades have been dedicated to neoliberalism.
That's interesting.
That's an
I'd never even thought.
synopsis.
You can tell why you have a PhD. I'll tell you that right now. Well, listen, we know you gave us plenty. Man, I wish we had a couple of hours here, but Dr. Steve, number one, thank you so much for being with us. Where can people find your stuff, and where can you watch your videos? Where do you go?
They can go to my website, turleytalks.com, or they could just punch my name, Dr. Steve Turley, in YouTube, and check out my channel there. We do 2 videos a day.
excellent interview, man. I really appreciate you coming.
Really
on.
do appreciate
Excellent.
it.
Thank you.
We look forward to having you on again.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. God bless you.
God bless you too.
Wow. I gotta say, I was educated.
Yeah, that's just it. Like I said,
I was educated. I was thoroughly educated. It's not so much A versus B.
Mm-hmm.
It's A and B and C and D. I mean, there's 2 camps in both sides.
Exactly.
And
we're not even part of it, really.
And he laid it out
Right.
very clearly. I mean, thank you for using layman's terms.
Now, listen, I got, and I'm sure the audience, when you're watching, you can obviously tell he's very well educated, and I think he reads a little bit. You think he reads some books?
Not
and,
at all. I
and
think that
pays
all
attention.
No, not at all. He watches Oprah, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. But doesn't it make you and count you blessed that we're among these people? And what I mean by that is that they're on our side, and I don't mean to say it like we're on a side, but we are. And it's nice to have a team like this.
Well, it's not antagonistic either.
Not at all.
It's
observing.
Well thought out. It's an observation. It's analytically validated.
Yes.
And it's a discussion.
Exactly.
Now, like I said, I'm not going to start throwing darts, but had this been somebody with a PhD in front of their name on the other side, it would be, well, you're doing this and you're doing that. And
exactly.
That was well put together. You can tell he's very educated.
Yep.
I loved it. Come back.
Well, yeah, please. And what's great about it, and one of the fascinating things that he said, if you didn't catch that, audience, is when he talked about what happens when the immigrants come over. The Democrats want the vote. What do the Republicans want?
Cheap labor.
Cheap labor.
And you know what? Thank you for calling us out on
exactly.
that.
Yes.
He's right.
Yes.
He's right.
Yeah. Because honestly, do you know anybody? I mean, we know people who get paid under the table, and that's the reality of it. And it's not like you're trying to use them, but that's what happens, and it's obvious. So it's both sides that are doing some.
But I like
things.
the way he thinks. The way he thinks, and I mean, I can't say I was in that camp, but after talking to him, I think he makes a very persuasive argument that the whole thing is going to collapse under its own weight.
Yeah. Because they don't realize it. He mentioned
it's not sustainable.
Right, exactly. Look at Nancy, and this sounds so.
She's gonna
before
okay. That happens.
You pretty much took the words. You took the words out of my mouth, but you noticed that Nancy, Chucky Schumer.
Well, she was there when the Declaration was signed, right?
No, I think it was before that.
She was like 3.
She gave birth to Thomas Jefferson, didn't she? Hopefully not. Sorry, Thomas. You wouldn't want that, Mama. But basically, okay. So these people, these leftists don't want them. They don't. They're just in the way. Mm-hmm. These guys are old school, and I'm sure they're watching, being like, just like tick tock. Oh, will these guys go away so we can just enter this domain and have our way? But they're gonna keep. They're not stopping fighting either. As old as they get, they're gonna keep fighting. And like he said, you're going to watch these guys come at their own little civil war, and it's not with guns, it's with what they're doing. They think they're helping Antifa by not condemning it and doing these things. Because speaking of which, did you see any of them call out and condemn? Correct me if I'm wrong. I hadn't seen anything that they condemned what happened in Oregon yesterday on the 29th when they stormed the Capitol in Oregon. Antifa.
No? I'm sure they didn't.
Okay. Mel? Nothing?
No.
Okay. So... Therefore, they think they're doing a good service, but they're doing a disservice to themselves because, like he just mentioned, they don't care what they think. They're just going to have their way anyway. They're going to do what they want. They just think keep helping us out. But if I can take your seat, I will. You know, that's just the bottom line.
You know what's interesting? How did Joe win, but not Bernie?
Because I think Joe, even with President Obama, I think he has been just a puppet. I think he's just a face who's there, and he will do what you say. He's
Bernie
a yes
is
man.
Further left than Joe.
Yeah.
Joe is just left out in left field.
Joe's a yes man.
I'm beginning to think there might be that may not be true, Mel. I'm really beginning to think that whatever's behind Biden, and like you say, being a yes man is far more left than we would have gotten with Bernie.
Yeah.
And Bernie was scary to begin with.
Right. And like you've mentioned a couple of times now, the possible the thing that might be haunting him, which is what they have on him. We haven't heard anything, and you hear little tricklets. Now the media's not talking about this.
Dude, I'm sticking by that conspiracy theory because when it comes out in about 4 years, I want to say I said it first.
Seriously, but you see how what you said recently, but did you hear about the trial that's happened? She's with Hillary.
Oh, no.
Okay, so the emails. Right, who cares?
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about that because is anything going to happen? And that's one of the questions. Does anything stick to any of these people?
No.
It doesn't stick. It doesn't do anything. And again, I think what was so awesome about what he said was we have a hope, and that is it looks scary. It looks like they're doing horrible things, and they are. We're going to reap some horrible consequences because of all this, and I think a lot of it's not just going to be physical, it's going to be emotional, psychologically. We're going to be hurting.
Well, I got a slight conviction while he was talking.
Really?
I mean, just a slight conviction. Minuscule.
I knew you had the Holy Ghost. Yeah.
Because, when he said, we may, when he made the analogy there, we may be on the same, maybe in the same party, but we're not on the same side.
Yes.
We got to be. I got to be careful about when I start pointing fingers at the Democrats. Mm-hmm. It's not all of them, because not even a lot of the people that are in that party align with this extremism that is going on in that party.
Yes.
And I think there's something to be said there. That being said, so I think we can grab onto a little nugget of hope that we do have some Republicans and not so far-leaning Democrats, the liberals that are just out there, that we have something that we all can kind of hold on to as a nugget that this isn't what we are as America. Mm. And if we can try to congeal around that as a total, both sides, there it might be hope.
True, absolutely. And I think along with your conviction, and I think this all goes for all of us. I think all of us have to take a moment and do some self-evaluation as Christians, especially, because number one, we're our own worst critics, and we're also everybody else's worst critics as well sometimes. And so what happens? Don't you touch my? No, I'm joking. What happens is, for example, we. And I say we because I'm just generalizing this. I don't mean anybody specifically, but we love to point out when somebody else does wrong. Mm-hmm. And what happens is we forget about, again, self-evaluation. What am I doing, though, that could be really not okay? What am I being convicted about? That person, fine, they're doing that thing. Who cares? Leave them alone. Let them get convicted. We don't need to be pointing it out, pointing in their face, and telling everybody about it.
Well, as the saying goes, when you're wrong, you want justice. But when you're wrong, you want grace.
Right, exactly. So the bottom line is we all have to learn. If we can all get to the place where we understand, and I think a lot of us are, we are all messed up. We just are. We except for Mel.
I was like, no, I got it going on over here. Mel saying,
I'm pretty sure Kim thinks. Doesn't think. She knows that she married somebody perfect. So that's different, though. It's a different ballgame.
What's Kim need Jesus for? She got Mel.
That's exactly. I asked that same question. For
we're
him.
all imperfect.
Yeah, exactly. We are all imperfect.
Oh, now he humbles himself.
Yeah, but not only. But a step further, though. I mean, look at. Sometimes we're ignorant of things, sometimes we aren't, and we just don't care about it until we finally realize, like, oh, you know what, I could be affecting somebody. I need to evaluate this a little bit. But there's so much grace, and I've been taking I'm sure you do the same thing with your kids. Yours aren't too old yet. Maybe you stepped out of me, Eleanor. Okay, I've been taking them from now. We're into Joshua now, and so when you look at all from Abraham, from the Garden of Eden to Joshua. Holy moly, Joshua too. They are messed up.
He's a good father. He reads the scriptures to his kids.
Well, listen to this though. This is what's fascinating, and it is. And the kids, they have a trillion questions because they're like, "What? Why are these people? Why would God let these wars happen? Why do they complain so much when they have everything?" I was like, "You compare it to today. We do the same thing. It's not the same, but we do the same thing every single day." But just in those points, like Joshua, he did a wrong. Remember, there's just one particular village that came out when they were going to destroying everything to take over the promised land. One came out with they signed a peace treaty with them. They acted like they were, they were just poor. They had nothing, so they signed something, went back and realized they had a lot. And they said, you lied to us. So well, we knew you'd come and destroy us. So they said, well, and they didn't inquire the Lord about it. That was the key thing. They never did. Yet they knew now they had to protect this colony, this civilization, because they signed this treaty. So what did Joshua pray for? And God still answered his prayer, even though they didn't even consult God on whether they should even protect this village.
How many times do we all do that?
Right. He stopped the sun and the moon. And by the way, scientifically, I believe that's been proven. They actually went back, they can go back in time and see that there was a portion of time in history where the sun and the moon actually stood still. So anyway, all that to say,
that's where daylight savings comes from.
Over the flat Earth, or
stinking thing? It is over the flat Earth. Ask Mel.
No, I hear the new. I hear the new theories are the Doughnut Earth. Have you heard that one yet?
Are you being serious?
I'm dead serious.
We got to call the creation guys. Are they still the creation guys? We got to call them.
We got to get them back on again. No, there's a new theory. It's not a flat Earth. It's not a round Earth. Now there's a Doughnut Earth, because what you're looking up, I swear, I see this.
Okay,
I'm sorry. We're on a sidebar here. I'm sorry.
Go for it. I want to.
My mind was blown when I saw that people actually believe this. That it's when you're looking up at the sky, you're actually looking at water. That's the ocean that you're looking at. That's why it's blue.
I mean, are they getting that from Scripture, where it says that God separated the waters from the waters?
No, they're saying that they believe if the only way that could be possible is if the Earth is shaped like a donut.
Well, it's an interesting fact.
There's people that
sorry,
believe
SpaceX.
this.
That's what you guys are crashing into the ocean when you go up.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I'm sorry to kill the Ken and Mike show, but
So
there's
it's
people
not
that believe
airplanes.
this.
It's actually boats in the air.
What is it?
It's not airplanes. It's actually boats in the air.
Right.
Good point.
Very good
interesting
point.
fact.
Good point.
At nighttime, the sky is actually transparent. What we see at nighttime, the sky that we see, the blackness, is actually from the universe.
Okay, I get what you're saying there. Yeah.
So it's not that we see a black sky. We don't see the sky anymore. We see, and that's why we see the stars and stuff.
Well, think about it. I mean, you guys ever have those moments, and maybe you have as well? I mean, my kids, that's the thing. Dad, do you ever just, how is God though? I don't understand it. Dad, my mind is like, it's like making me freaked out. Because when you start to look at the vast universe and you look up in the sky, it can be like, what in the world? How in the world did we get here?
My kids don't ask questions like that. My kids ask why they can't put plastic plates in a toaster. I mean, sorry, Olivia.
We all have our battles.
I do. On a side note, speaking of your kids, though, I'm sure you already are, but proud of your daughter for it. She's been posting some awesome things. Speaking of scripture and stuff like that, some of her sayings that she puts on Facebook and stuff like that are really encouraging.
Yes, she's really come out of her
I wanted
shell.
to say that. Yeah, well,
thank you. She's standing on something and not taking any flack from anybody, which is pretty cool.
Yep. So I just wanted to say that because that's a really cool thing. That says something right there. So not from you.
Her mother did a good job.
But no. So anyway, all that is fascinating. So on this flat Earth that we're living, the reality of what could happen is if you get scared, just jump off the side.
Live on the Ken and Mike show, I just snarfed my coffee.
I'm getting donuts tomorrow.
That's fat. That's very well. I do know. I mean, they said in the beginning that there was a sphere over the Earth at one point, and that's why we had a complete. And this, I kind of believe this. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know, but I mean, this scientifically, they kind of say this.
Do I need to get tinfoil?
No, not at all, not at all. Many scholars, but not just scholars, but many really people who study this type of thing. They say that there was a sphere over the Earth
of ice, right?
Not of ice, almost of a layer, almost of water.
Okay.
So
I've heard the similar theory where they believe the whole Earth at one time was encrusted in ice.
No, so basically, because remember there was no rain, they got water from the
ground.
Earth, And then when the flood happened, that's when he let the floods come down. Because at one time, the reason why the earth was so, the garden or anything, the oxygen level was higher. All these things, healing time was easier because there was almost like a greenhouse effect. So when the sun was shining in, everything, again, was completely
Hey, someone
exact.
just shared an article with me, and I won't...
Just now?
No, I won't blow them up on our show, but they shared an article with me that this planet was virtually dry however many millions of years ago. And they said the reason why we have all the water we have now is because another planet hit our planet and deposited its water on our planet.
Which is interesting because even a tiny knock of anything to knock us, especially a planet, to knock us off our axis, would deliver us death.
Wait.
So-
So another planet, a water planet, collided with our
This
planet,
sounds like a superhero movie. Go for it.
and it didn't. Nothing happened, but yet they cry about meteorites that could be hitting the Earth or 2,000 miles away.
Listen, I'm just telling you what was shared. I don't know the validity.
No, I'm not
I don't know the
arguing with you.
validity of the argument or the discussion, but apparently there's many scholars that agree with this theory.
Well, there's also okay. There's I heard
Scholars of
this
what?
thing called
Sesame
I heard this thing called the Big Bang, where all of a sudden there's just like some type of bacterial infection in the rocks and it came alive. So there's something there too. But basically,
Slime plus time,
slime
baby.
plus time, baby. So they also say like the Earth. Some scholars, really well known, obviously they're smart, say that the Earth it's always speeding up. So if it was millions and billions of years old, it'd be going so fast right now that we'd literally fly off the Earth. So is their theory correct?
Hey,
We're
there's
not
people
speeding
that
up.
get paid a lot more than I do and have higher education than I do that can answer those questions. I
I don't think that they can. I think God can, but I don't-
Right. Well,
yeah.
I'd rather go to that one.
Yeah.
I'd rather go to the author.
Well, and let's state that
Yes.
the Word of God has never let me down,
That's it right there.
and you can
Yeah.
test it, you can prove it, and if it says it, I believe it.
Yes. Amen. Amen, brother.
That's all I got.
That's what I love it.
You know,
I
it's
mean,
great.
there's a lot of people that try to make themselves like God because they want to sound
Like Bill Nye the Science Guy.
they want to sound intellectual. They
Mhm.
want to sound intelligent. Like, I've got my stuff together. You could put as many cool arguments together and write as many theses as you want and put as amount of data into it as you want and present it as an authoritative paper. But 10 years from now, somebody else is going to come out with something else that's going to be more authoritative. And at least the Word of God hasn't changed. And that stays the same way. And I've always said
Great
this,
point.
a clever argument is always at the mercy of another cleverer argument.
Always.
So I'll go with the Word of God. It's never failed. You can come out with me with your millions of years theories and keep adding it on. I mean, I think, in the 70s we were only around for 7 billion years. Now it's up to 14 billion years.
Yeah.
Because every time they can't explain something,
Oh,
they,
yeah.
they add more time.
Yes.
And I'm not saying they're wrong, but let's go back to the Scripture. You can validate that and back it up with all the data you want. But that data is always changing. They'll say, well, science, that's what science does. Okay, but if that's always changing, this Word of God has not changed.
Mm-hmm.
I can count on that. Until you can tell me what that says is absolutely wrong, I'll entertain what you're telling me, but I'm not going to put stock in it.
Well, that's just it. Like you said, they add more time to it, right?
Mhm.
So anytime they're wrong, it's more time. So, for example, this is just it's funny, it's lame, it's dumb. However, you hear this a lot from preachers sometimes. You said, if that is true, just show me one person, that is still forming from monkey to human. I mean, that's because now if we're still evolving, if that really happened, what are we turning into next?
Right.
Or why haven't we evolved since billions of years ago?
Well, they'll always say they have,
they'll find little things like in fish and stuff, and fish bones, a fin is becoming a foot.
They've always argued that many times, that, where's the missing link? And even if they do find one, I mean,
Bigfoot?
they find one,
would love to.
which I know a lot of times always proves out to be we found a bone that is definitely this, and it turns out to be a pig foot or something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
But regardless, say they do find one. Shouldn't there be millions, thousands of transitional species?
Should they? But again, Mike, you're
I'm
talking
not
about
I'm not that smart.
billions of years,
I'm
brother.
using just my deductive reasoning
Yes.
in simplistic terms. If evolution is true, and I don't know how we got on this topic, but
Yeah.
if evolution is true, and like you just said, well, then we should see, half man, half whatever, half fish, half ape, half
Yes.
dog.
Some say squirrels.
There should be more than one.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't there be many?
There should be. Absolutely. Yeah. But again, it's not they don't come from a common sense perspective. They come from science.
This is
different.
bad math. If you start out with bad math, you keep going on, it's still going to
You can
end up being bad
You
math.
can call me ridiculous. You can call me uneducated. You can call me stupid because you can come up with all sorts of
Right.
arguments. That's fine. But please just follow my reasoning.
Right.
In the,
I don't
Be rationale.
get it.
Yeah.
in the famous words of Will Smith, you are the dumbest smart person.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's a great. It's a we have to have the Pat Roy and Kyle Justice. Got to get them back on.
We should.
Yeah, it'd be great. Speaking of which,
We should call him.
we should call. I will.
Call him right
Or
now.
you? Yeah, we'll call him right now. Yeah. Listen though. By the way, if you're just catching this show now, definitely rewind it after it's live because you're gonna want to check out Dr. Steve Turley.
What an incredible guest. That was cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. I tell you what, the Ken and Mike Show gets some excellent guests on this show. I don't think we've had one bad guest, and I don't mean that we probably ever will. And my point is we get some good guests, and it's such a privilege and honor to have people like him. And again, what we were just talking about PhDs and all these kinds of things, and you have these things after your name. What's so great about him is that he didn't come at anything with a judgmental attitude at all.
No.
It was just. This is the observation that we get. It's pretty obvious that it's like this, and when you put it together and you look at it from Ula Abengadi or whatever whatever you want to say back over here, this person, this
Look
is
at
what's
my
happening.
title.
Yeah, but again, it's people like that you want on your team,
Right.
because he's number one. He's going to listen to you and hear your perspective, and then he might be able to recite it a little bit better than you do, and which is awesome. So it's just great to have people like that. Speaking of different things that we talked about with him, real quick, and we got to tell our
Tell people who we got next week.
yeah, exactly. I will in just a minute. Because I got to kind of prep that because I tell you, it's going to be a great guest too.
Did I steal your fire?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I wanted to just mention though. He was mentioning a lot about the border walls and what's happening right now. The border walls are still there, of course.
They haven't gone anywhere.
They haven't gone anywhere, thankfully. But what is happening over there? We're seeing an insurgence of people coming over, and it's a dangerous situation. And not just for America in itself, which it is, but for our people that we have on the border, protecting us. And they don't. I'm sure they feel like, come on, this is not good for us because they have families too. So the question being, and I mentioned to him, Article 4, Section 4 of our Constitution protects that. And they're not working it. But one thing, I'm not going to read my whole article. I put an article. If you go to the we haven't mentioned any of this kind of stuff. Make sure you go to the BMGnetwork.com. Check out the Ken and Mike Show. Check out the Ken Burns Show. Check out Mic'd Up with Mike Hansen. Check out Set Apart with KC. And check out the Pac-Man podcast and the Pac Perspective.
I promise you a new version of Mic'd Up with Mike Hansen's coming.
We're excited.
I'm
waiting for it.
We meant to talk to you about it before
Yes.
the show.
Well, I'm
But
excited.
Yes, we want to do it.
I'm excited. But one of the things I said, and I have a new feature on there called Desultory Thoughts, and it's just random.
That's a big word.
It is.
That's an SAT word. Can you define that for me?
I sure can. It's another way of saying random.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Huh? Here are some desultory thoughts of mine. That's really what it's like. So basically, it's
Desultory just sounds desolate.
yeah, it really kind of is actually. It's basically saying like
It's like it's got no substance.
it's like this. If you wrote a column and your column is all about politics, your column's all about sports, your column's all about fish, whales, whatever. This is just can be
Evolution.
It can be anything. There's no
Different
aim in
plants.
sight. It's just something that comes
Flat Earth.
something that's happening. We're going to put it out there. That's kind of what this column is about. So one of the things I put up there is it's called Border Invasion. Won't read the whole thing. You can go to the BMGnetwork.com, go to Desultory Thoughts. You'll see it there. But the very ending sentence is what I want to kind of is the takeaway with it. It says, while yes, it is disheartening as we see all of these atrocities happening in our world, and they are, at least on the surface, and the out-of-control border being one of them, we must keep in mind that they all stem from a root of evil. We who understand this, that's us, must continue to stay rooted and grounded in God Almighty. As we do this, and as we pray, seriously pray, we can continue to hope and know that whatever the left has in mind for its end game, God has something else in mind, and we all know what it is. His way, like you just mentioned a little while ago, his way will absolutely prevail because, unlike the left, he is a man of his word and he always upholds his promises. That's the reality. So that's one thing that we can do. There it is right there. That is my other one. You got to go up. Move it up a little bit there. Keep going. Keep going. There it is right there. Yeah, Mel can't see that. You can see it there. So yeah, you can read it right there. And if you go up, go up a little higher. Go up a little higher. You can see right there. I talk about the Constitution a little bit there, and what invasion, the definition of invasion is. But take a look at it. You can see that we do have borders, and our Constitution talks about those borders, and we should be protecting them, and we should be protecting the people in here. So, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Our guest next Tuesday.
Who is she?
Who is she? Her name is Bridget Gabriel, and she's a New York Times best-selling author. And just look her up. I'm telling you, Bridget. It's Brigitti Gabriel. She's a leading expert on global Islamic terrorism. She's a New York Times best-selling author. Like I mentioned, a expert in global Islamic terrorism and chairman of ACT for America. It's the largest security grassroots organization in America. She has a latest book entitled Rise, in Defense of Judeo-Christian Values and Freedom. We need that, right? So this is the kind of person that we would love to have on our show, and we have her next Tuesday, 6 p.m., which time zone is that, Mike?
Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern Standard Time. We have her on, so be sure and tune in to the Ken and Mike Show, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Bridget Gabriel. It's going to be great. And she has not only that, I don't even want to tell it here because I want her to tell the story of her upbringing. If you think you've had it hard, if you think you have it hard now, wait till you see, right here, you see it on the screen, wait till you hear her testimony of which she grew up with, and you can see.
I'm looking forward to it.
You can see why she's outspoken about some things.
We keep going with like the guests we had tonight.
Yes,
and then this one we keep going on that part. I mean, pretty soon we don't need to say a thing.
We don't need to say. We'll just say, "Hey, how you doing?" Go ahead. So, Mike, it's been an honor and a privilege.
Been awesome. Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah,
thank you, Mel. And next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern
Tell
Standard
the folks
Time.
where they can find some stuff, though. Where can they find us, Mike?
On the BMG network.
They can. Where else, though?
Oh, they come knock on my door.
They could knock on the door.
Come and knock on our door.
Keep going.
Anyway, no, that's your spiel, man. Go for it. Where can you find them?
You can find us. Go to YouTube. And on YouTube, if you look up the Ken and Mike Show, you can find us
Google us.
right there. You Google us, please. And go to the BMGnetwork.com. You can find everything there.
Google us while we can still be found on Google.
Yes. Thank you. And don't forget, please go check out Dr. Steve Turley's information. What a wonderful guest. Excellent scholar, obviously. You could tell by everything he had to say.
He knew what he was talking about.
He knew what he was talking about. Those are the kind of people you want on your team. And those are the people that you want to get some advice from. Expert advice and what's going on globally. And internationally, nationally, all of it. Don't just listen to the media, please.
Right.
Anyway.
We love doing the show. We love having you watching us and listening to us. Please tune in again next week. Once again, we're going to have an awesome guest next week. We had an awesome guest this week with Dr. Turley. We appreciate you tuning in. Tune in again next week.
Right
God
here
bless you.
On the Ken and Mike Show. God bless you guys.
The Ken and Mike Show.